talk about the New York Metropolitans. Bring your kiddies. Bring your wife. Have the time of your life. We're talking Mets. First place in the NL East, the best team in the National League. It is a good time to be a Mets fan. Of course, as we were going about the show tonight, the Mets beating the Mariners 5-4. The urban legend, Patrick Mazeika, Dylan brought us that update with a solo home run for the win. So they go to 24 wins on the year now. It's a fun time. Bounce back win from last night after a loss. So much to get into with the Mets. What I want to get started with, though, is this. Let's start with some positive stuff, because you know what? There's always some negative things we can get into, of course. You know, it's the Mets. There's always going to be a little bit of thing that you can kind of chip away at. Anyone that knows me knows I have no problem talking about negative.
I know. I don't think I've
Mets.
ever seen Leegan
No,
happy.
He's so happy. I love this.
And look,
that was the best opening of the night so
I know.
far.
It was
that
so
was
enthusiastic.
Well, and we also
I'm like,
we got to give a shout out also Juliana Burke with the amazing musical choice, Aerosmith. Fantastic walk this way. Perfect way to get us started. But let's get back to the Mets real quick, of course. And so when I'm talking about
veer from the
no,
Mets.
we cannot. We cannot.
There's so much.
And this is why, because you guys mentioned it. The Mets are constantly a source of negativity in my life. So when you have this positive, this beautiful gift that is the New York Mets, and I've said this on Nosebleeds, I've said this on One-on-One, I'm going to be positive now because I don't have reason to be negative yet, and I want to ride this wave. And unlike teams in the past, there have been Mets teams that have gotten off to hot starts. I want to talk about 2018, 2019, Mickey Callaway years. They got us some hot starts there. There have been some paper tiger Met teams. This team, I look at this roster, even last year, got off to a hot start, collapsed towards the end. I don't see the holes that I used to see in those other rosters. And you know why I don't see the holes? I look at this lineup, and there's a lot of contributors. Let's start off with this. Pete Alonso, 8 home runs, team lead, 28 RBIs, around a 279 average right now, if I'm not mistaken. He's been a huge contributor. Also, you know, some solid play with the glove. I got to give him a shout out for that.
Yeah.
Jeff McNeil. This is the guy that the Mets fans have been waiting to see. Down year last year, got that average back up, 318. Fantastic. Brandon Nimmo getting on base, 419 on base percentage. And new guys, Mark Canha, really big contributor. He's been great. Starling Marte, his average a little bit down, 254. But look, 20 RBIs in the year. He's been great in 2-out situations. Dylan, you claim to be a Mets fan. No,
this has been addressed on the show before. We've talked about this before. He knows I come from a split family, and he thinks, you know, I'm not a purebred Mets fan. So.
Well, no, to me, part of being a Mets fan is you hate the Yankees. But and you know what? If you have any thoughts about can you be a split Mets Yankee fan, give us a call 718-817.
Oh wow, you just
5
set me up for
Dylan.
fire. This is going to be a disaster.
Come in as fandom. We'll take the calls. But no, Dylan.
Sure.
You do know the Mets. You did cover this team. I'm just busting your chops a little bit.
Of course.
As you look at the Mets lineup right now, and I gave you a few names, and we'll get to the pitching in just a second.
Yeah.
Who in this lineup is exciting you the most? What is making you positive when you look at this Mets starting lineup?
Well, it's interesting, Mike. You talk about, prior Mets teams. You look at a team like 2021, for example, a team that's always going to be near and dear to my heart for obvious reasons.
Pretty much only you. Not a lot of Mets fans.
Yeah, no, they're going to love 2021. But you know what's interesting about them is, they got off to an incredible start. 116 days they led the National League East. And, there was a lot of high hopes about this team in a similar vein to this team. But the difference here is nobody in this Mets lineup, whether that be offensively or defensively, with the possible exception of Jeff McNeil, but perhaps not also, is overperforming right now. That was the big thing with the Mets last year. Obviously, you had Francisco Lindor was kind of the headline. He was underperforming to a notorious extent, but there were a lot of guys on that team that were just, were overdoing their job, and that's what was working. That's why we saw the bench mob have such prominence last year.
I flushed that season. I forgot that was even a thing.
Yeah, no. You look at Luis Guillorme and Kevin Pillar, and these are guys who are good players, but they were playing above their pay rate and, quite frankly, what anyone expected from them. And that's why the Mets were able to be in first place for so long. Yeah. This is a lineup that I struggle to find a word for it other than just they are mature professional hitters. And you see that. Even in a guy like, Lindor's average has been down for the last 3 weeks. Starling Marte's average has been down for the last 3 weeks. Jeff McNeil, perhaps overperforming. Pete is kind of at a good level, and he's improved defensively also. But none of it is so out of the water that you go, well, that's not all that sustainable. That is not something the Mets have to worry about at the moment, in my opinion. Perhaps we'll see a difference in that down the road, and I think that's when the managerial experience of Buck Showalter is going to step in.
I mean, look, and I'll get to this in a second part of the segment, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. Buck Showalter, in all honesty, you want to talk about any of the additions they made this offseason player-wise, Buck has been by far and away the best addition they've made.
No, absolutely.
But you know what, Kayla, before we get your opinion real quick, there's a couple people on the line that want to give you a little bit of a shout-out. Lauren and Justin, I think we have them right now. I think they want to give you a special message, Kayla. You guys there?
Justin?
Hello?
Oh,
Lauren? Hello? Yeah, the Mets are great and all. I definitely get your perspective on that. But I think what we should really be talking about right now is Kayla Wentzel.
All right, yeah.
I think that we probably should
sure,
not be.
Sure.
You know what? That's a fair
We
point.
can
Let me talk about Kayla.
give
Maybe
Kayla
we should talk about me another time.
a quick bit of praise here.
No, definitely.
Well,
no need
I
to.
feel like we're about to hear from someone else who's on the line, so let's hear from them.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the biggest problem right now is Dylan is a split fan. I don't know if you can really
Justin's coming at you.
do that.
Good job, Justin.
Hey, look.
We're
Look,
listening.
Look, I'm happy to come on air and talk about sports and baseball, football, hockey, whatever you want. But let's leave my personal life out of this, okay? That is
Leegan brought it
unacceptable
up.
talk for public radio, okay? Let's not do that, okay? Anyways, Kayla, you had something you wanted to say?
Well, I was just gonna say that Buck Showalter, his leadership of this team is something that I think cannot be understated. And thank you to Lauren and Justin. Obviously, love talking about myself, but today is not the time. We're here to talk about Dylan, obviously, as every other day.
It's the Dylan Balsamo show on WFUV.
But I just think that his leadership really can't be understated. Like, this team is working so cohesively, and the additions that he's put into the bullpen, especially into his coaching staff, I think that these are things that are making the Mets what they are right now, and why their lineup is looking so cohesively. Because, like you guys said, there's always holes in a Mets team, and I'm remiss to say that there aren't holes yet. Okay, everybody. I
we
mean,
can talk about it.
I'm a Phillies fan,
No,
so we
there's
know
holes.
this,
No,
but
it's
there's
fair.
totally holes.
Yeah,
And
but
so
we
I
also
think
won every series we played against you guys.
so far.
Yeah.
But
You guys.
it is only May, Michael Leegan.
Yeah, but the thing is, the Mets play the Phillies for a good majority of May. But you know what? Before we get into some more negatives here, we're talking Buck Showalter. We're talking baseball coaching. Well, the man that used to coach me in baseball for a very long time, my father, is on the line.
What a show this is.
Dad, what's going on?
Mike, first long time from Sandwood, New Jersey. How you guys doing tonight?
We're good.
Hi,
How's
Mr.
it going?
Leegan.
Great to hear from you, Mr. Leegan.
Please, Michael, the original one.
Yeah, all right,
OG.
okay.
Of course.
Yeah, all right. Relax.
A huge shout out to everyone at the station. In front of the glass, behind the glass. I've enjoyed every moment of the 4 years. I can't wait to see what you guys do in the future. I just want to clear up a few things, though, about the Mets, because I've been rooting for them since the 70s. You cannot be a Mets fan and even like the Yankees.
Okay, I feel
wow.
like you know what? I will
let's
walk out of the
get that out
studio
there.
right now. I never said I was one way or the other way, and you know what? Now I'm not going to say anything at all. So let's keep talking.
I'm not casting aspersions. I'm just speaking the truth. But
All
that
right.
being said,
Takes after
great
his
show.
father.
Keep up the good work. Love you all. Keep it up. And one last thing.
Yes.
With the human out being hurt, I
Okay,
think it's
I'll
time
have
to go get a new
explain-
couch.
I'll have to
for the
explain
Mets.
that. All right. So thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you,
Enjoy
Dad.
Thank you,
That
Mr.
was great.
All right,
Leegan.
Thank you.
thank you for calling in. My father has told me from the day I started working here. Now, my dad's also the one that got me into sports talk radio, and we can get into this at the end of the show when we do the whole emotional stuff. But, he's always said to me, because he's a big sports radio guy himself, I always want to call in. I always want to call him, Dad, you cannot call in. I was like, for the senior show, you can finally call in. So he got his call in. He made some good points. I have to explain something he mentioned. He said at the end there, he said the human out is now out of the lineup. Who he's referring to, the human out, and, I got to be careful what I say, is a reference to the current injured Mets catcher who perpetually is not contributing offensively. So,
Wait,
my
James
James
McCann
McCann?
did what?
yeah, James McCann did what exactly? My father is saying that we should get another catcher. So that's a nickname he has for him. So there you go.
Ouch.
That's a
James
real Mets
McCann.
fan. It's a real Mets fan. Like he said, since the 70s. And
that's
look,
fair.
I think I've been in a lot of pain. No one suffered more as a Met fan or a Jet fan, and we'll talk Jets later on in the show, than my father. But you know what? We were talking. Let's get back on track here. And I love the calls. Keep them coming. 718-817-2750. You know what? We talked a little about the offense. People overperforming. Is it sustainable? We talked about the Yankees that way, too. I think when you have teams that are off hot starts, there's really not a lot of negatives, you say. Just the question is, how long is it going to last? And then, Kayla, you mentioned a little bit about Buck, some of the lineup decisions that he's made. Good stuff there. Really, he knows the game of baseball. I go back to this play. I think it was, what was it, in the Cardinals? No, it was against the Diamondbacks earlier in the season. They were going to do an appeal play at third. He has J.D. Davis steal. That way the appeal can't be done.
That was an outstanding
And
play.
they didn't even know they could do that. That just speaks to Buck's, savviness as a baseball guy. Coaching staff-wise, Alex Cora is the best third base coach. And now I'm getting in the weeds. There's no way that, unless you're like Frank the Tank or like, you're a real Mets fan, you're going to care about this stuff. But Alex Cora has been a fantastic third base coach, aggressive on the base paths. You love to see that. But you know what? when you're talking about the Mets, and the Mets as a franchise are so deeply rooted in the pitching. Dylan, we look at this pitching staff. I think obviously coming into the year it was all about DeGrom and Scherzer, and obviously DeGrom has been hurt. But who for you right now in this pitching staff is? I mean, you can say Scherzer. That's not a bad answer. But who's stood out the most to you on this pitching staff right now?
Well, I guess in terms of, because I can get what you're alluding to right now, and it really is a bit of a toss-up in that respect to Tyler McGill and Chris Bassett. But it's very easy to have not watched any West Coast baseball over the last couple of years and not know who Chris Bassett was.
Yeah.
And anyone who does would know that he's the man, and he has been for a long time. Tyler McGill has really come into his own. There's a lot of analytics online. Specifically, you can find him from a good friend of mine, Jolly Olive from John Boy Media. An analysis he did of Tyler McGill and his form and how it's kind of shaped very similar to a young Jacob deGrom. And you hope that means that any success he's had right now, that not that he hasn't had that previously in 2021, but it's really to a great extent right now. You hope that is something he's able to keep going forward, at least for the rest of this season and for a long time for the New York Mets. And it's interesting because you and I came of age, Michael, in a New York Mets era that we came to believe that there was going to be a 5-guy pitching staff that was going to be able to win every day because the 5 guys were also
Steven Matz, Noah Syndergaard, Matt Harvey, DeGrom, and who am I forgetting?
Syndergaard.
Syndergaard, Steven Matz, Harvey, DeGrom. Who's the 5th
Matz?
guy? Oh, Wheeler.
Wheeler. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and obviously that didn't pan out. Oh well. But with a guy
not
like
cut up on it
with
or
a guy like no, I'm not mad about it. It's fine. No, but with a guy like Tyler McGill, you begin to develop hope that the Mets can go out and get a guy like Max Scherzer. They can go out and get a guy like Chris Bassett. But the homegrown talent of their pitching continues to flourish, and hopefully they can do it in a way now that sustains a little more.
I would say this, Dylan, about Tyler McGill. And look, we were starting off the season, and when DeGrom went out, a lot of people were concerned. The Mets, do they have the arms to replace DeGrom? Look, no one can replace Jacob DeGrom. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But, a lot of people were saying Tyler McGill, I mean, he had like over 4 ERA last year. And look, he has, and let's be fair, last couple of starts, he has struggled. He got beat up a little bit against the Braves. He got tattooed against the Nats. So last 2 starts out, not great for Tyler, but he's got that low heart rate that Buck likes to say. A good mentality. Hopefully he can pick it up next start because his ERA now is up over 4. But he's had a strong start. But my point is, coming into the year, I was saying, look, part of the reason why Tyler fell off last year is because he had come up straight from AA, very few starts in AAA. He didn't have the innings on his arm in his career to pitch, that full length of a season. It's obviously got tired. So you saw more of the guy that we saw at the start of last year. You're seeing the start of this year, which is great. But you know what, Dylan? I think there's someone on the line who might be here to help with your defense of the Mets Yankees. I'm assuming that might be what he's doing.
I hope
Mark,
so.
what do you have comments for the Mets right now?
Thank you for
he's
taking my
back.
call. Once again, Mark from Oakland. I'm not in anyone's defense here.
Hi,
especially
Mr.
for someone on the
Balsamo.
Oh my goodness.
How are you? Thank you for having me. My question is to the panel is growing up and being a Yankee fan, marrying into a Met family, and then having 3 children, and bearing the thought of them being Yankees and Met fans at the same time. How does one balance that, especially with both teams being in first place at this time?
Hey, Dad.
It's a tough parenting
Dad,
decision.
This sounds more like a question for your therapist, and I would be
No,
glad to
no,
answer
Mr.
about
Great.
that.
This is
No,
fantastic.
Balance. How do I raise it? Can we
getting
stop with this?
No,
philosophical.
Mr. Balsamo, it's a good question.
Just
very good
coming
question.
after me. My goodness gracious.
It's a very good
And
question.
you did the best you could with Dylan.
Well,
Caleb.
we could, but once again, we have to kind of look at this from afar and figure out how are we going to balance this when he comes home and we're watching a Yankee and Met game. So
This is
I'm
going
going
to
to
be
hang
tough
up
for
now.
your household.
Okay, this actually sounds okay. I'm just gonna say it sounds more like your fault. You allowed for this to happen in your house, for this to marinate your house. We have a golden retriever, and his name is Shay. You allowed for that to happen, and that's what it is. It's not my fault. The heart grows fonder towards a certain team over a certain period of time. I'm sorry to say this, but that's just what happened.
So what are you
Sorry,
saying?
Dad.
Which team?
Which team do you root for?
I'm definitely more of a Mets fan than I am.
So
Oh.
see, but
That's
still,
the first time I've ever said it publicly.
Declarative.
That's still
That's
an
not a word.
oxymoron because I'm
All
sorry.
right, so okay, he said it,
He
out
said
there
it.
to the public.
He said it, Mr.
Yep,
Balsamo.
Very nice.
So he's not coming home after graduation. It's out there.
Disown
As we
him.
know.
Mm.
As
Wow.
you know, but thank you for taking my call, and Dylan, enjoy the rest of your life. Thank you very much.
Thank you
This-
so much,
Wow,
Mr.
wow, what a
This,
Balsamo.
call.
this is
What
the
a
heart
call.
of sports talk radio. This
Wow.
is this is what we came to
Parents
college
were
for.
rating their
Look,
children.
no, look, part of the great mean, one of the great things about Sports Talks Radio is the aggressive, mean callers. And you know what? I didn't think it'd be your father, but you know what? That's fine by me.
That was, my
but
goodness.
you know what? We
Air your dirty
could sit
laundry.
here all night and debate the validity of Met Yankee fans. But you know what? I got to be a little selfish here. This is my last one-on-one. It's my A-hosted segment. I just want to talk about the Mets.
No, that's
so
fair. That's fair.
and you know what? I think it's fitting as, you know, because most of my time I've been here, the Mets, in the 4 years I've been at Fordham, the Mets have not made the playoffs in my time here. They've typically not been great. So I think it'd be more fitting if we did a little bit of negative talk, because that's more of what I'm known for, screaming and yelling and ranting and raving. So you know what? Look, and I'm still positive about this Mets team. Don't get me wrong. I have not been as positive about a Mets team. You want to mention 2015? That's great. That team was 500 at the All-Star break and went on a huge run to the postseason. I never saw any of that coming. Big hopes for 16, but even I knew that was a flawed roster.
Yeah.
You had Ty Kelly in the infield, Neil Walker at second base. There wasn't any like crazed expectations about that team. This Mets team, for the first time in my lifetime, 2006, I was very young, and I have vague memories of that team, so I can maybe say 2006, but there's not a team that compares. So I say that to say I am still optimistic despite what I'm going to say right now. There's still some concerns. And, Kayla, you said there's some holes, and there is. The Mets bullpen has been relatively inconsistent at times. They've had some scoreless streaks, and they've had some not-so-great moments either. I never would imagine the day. You want to talk about a retrospective moment here at Fordham. Summer after my freshman year was the first year of Edwin Diaz. And I remember
Oof,
coming
Edwin
up.
Diaz.
I'll never forget this. It's about the senior night. It's about your years here at Fordham. I was coming up to FUV. I was at home in New Jersey. I was coming up to do Life in the Minors recording with Nicholas DeLuca. We are doing the award-winning, by the way, Life in the Minors, just so you know, 2019 season. And
Subtle flex.
yes, and I still never got that plaque. I don't know where it is. Anyway,
You're talking about the Mets.
Yeah, but we're getting back to the Mets here. Anyway, please. I'm coming up. The Mets were playing that day. I remember being on the subway platform as Edwin Diaz blew a save against the Philadelphia Phillies, leading to the classic Mike Francesa rant of, send the bus back down to New Jersey and all this other stuff. The bottom line is Diaz in 2019, to see what he is now, I never would imagine. He's the best arm in the bullpen. I went through all that to say he's the best arm in the bullpen. The rest of the bullpen,
Scary thought.
I don't. And he's been good, but you got to give him credit. He had one blown save. They still won that game. He's been solid. Drew Smith had a scoreless streak up until last night. He unfortunately lost it. But again, some of the guys in the bullpen, I'm not really so sure about. And look, guys in the lineup, Lindor, great hot start to the year. It's the Lindor we wanted to see. That being said, he's down to 229 in the year. And one thing you could always count on him, even last year when he was struggling, solid defender. Excuse me. And, he's had some shoddy defensive time this year. Not what you want to see out of him. Some suspect throws. Not really something you want to, like I said, see out of Francisco Lindor. Eduardo Escobar, who, again, hot start, is really cooled off, down to 209 on the year. Dom Smith and J.D. Davis. J.D. Davis I have no expectations for, so I don't care. Dom Smith, really hyped up. He has not performed this year. So I run through a list of potential concerns with this Mets team right now. Kayla, you're a Phillies fan, so I'm sure you're going to have no problem hating on the Mets.
Oh, I mean, this is very simple for me.
Please tell me right now.
Hip-ball.
I asked Dylan what's the biggest positive. You're more of a Mets hater. But you're not really a hater. But give me.
I would not say I'm a hater.
You're not a hater, but you're more likely to critique the Mets. Give me a negative with this Mets team right now.
What do I think is the big? I think the biggest negative right now is their bullpen. It's doing okay right now, but honestly, is this going to last? The sustainability is the biggest question for me about the Mets, because I feel like the Mets have done this before, and you guys have talked about it, the sort of heartbreak of their seasons. Like, I don't think that this is something that they're going to be able to keep up for like 3, 4, 5, I don't even know, 5 months more of games. Like, I think that this is a lot right now and it's doing well, but there's no way they're going to keep being undefeated in series. Oh, yeah. There's no way that any of this is going to occur after this. So I think to me the bullpen is dangerous. So you have Edwin Diaz. Who else? And he's not reliable necessarily. He's been okay right now, but
you have Joely Rodriguez.
I know, but you've seen in the past that these players can fall apart just as quickly as they can seemingly get it together. So I think to me, it's just the hot and colds of the bullpen.
Look, that's very fair. And look, bullpens, and I've said this before, bullpens are like the kickers of baseball. One year they're good, one year they're not. Mets bullpen was good last year. A lot of that was Aaron Loop. This year, again, inconsistency. They for stretches they've looked good. Other stretches not so much. Dylan, I've made jokes at your expense throughout this segment. Before we wrap it up, give me one thing as we're looking at the second half here. You know what? Before we know it, the All-Star break's going to get here. We're going to have trade deadline time. Real quick, what is the biggest need? Kayla mentioned bullpen, but maybe is it DH? I don't know, because Dom Smith, J.D. Davis not performing. where's an acquisition you'd like to see them make it at the trade deadline? As we get, it's going to be here before we know it.
It's fair. It always approaches way much more quickly than I ever expected to. It's interesting you mentioned DH. At the beginning of the year when, Pete Alonso was DH in a little bit, he was the best DH in National League history. And there was a part of me that went, okay, yeah, that's great. Dom Smith is always the better defensive first baseman anyway. He'll just, play first base, but he continues to struggle just like he did for the second half of last year. So, yeah, that is a question. As much as the bullpen is a question, and as much as, this weekend as they play in Seattle, it's kind of a reckoning of the trade that brought Edwin Diaz to New York. Yeah, to me, those are the two big things is, as much as you thought you were going to have an influx of players coming into the season with both Mcneil and Dom Smith and who's going to play where, that has become a question you're going to have to answer is, a potential left fielder / DH is perhaps something you're going to want to look for. I don't know who that could possibly be. And then a bullpen arm, too.
I mean, look, bullpen arm, huge thing. Maybe a guy like Mark Melanson, he's on the Diamondbacks, not a big contender. Bring him in maybe. Obviously, he wouldn't be the closer. As far as DH, look, like we both said, Dom and JD, I'm a little concerned. I mean, you already have apparently Buck Showalter has asked Mark Hanna to take some reps at first. That does not bode well for Dom. Look, Dom had a great night against the Phillies Sunday Night Baseball to win that job, but it seemed like he might have gotten demoted. They DFA Robinson Cano instead. But yeah, since then, he hasn't really done much. I'm a little concerned about Dom. I would say maybe some power.
I want to add one more thing,
Go ahead,
Leegan,
Kayla.
not to cut you off,
It's
but
fine.
I think
I cut
another
people
thing.
off all the time.
Okay.
Like right now.
Then
Like
I'm
you
not
just
sorry.
said.
I'm not sorry anymore. I think another thing for the Mets is injuries. I think that you guys, not you guys because you're not on the team, but the Mets in of themselves are a
hate
very
people do that.
injury-prone team, and so I think
You're
that's
telling me.
something that's like. So they're doing great right now, but what happens? We just saw James McCann. I think not that. That they weren't super excited about it. But I think that that's something to consider here.
Yeah, no, it's fair. It's clearly, after all of these years, it can't be a coincidence every time. It's clearly a systemic franchise problem that has not really been addressed, and you hope...
You said you believe in curses.
Maybe this is something from
I
above.
do potentially believe in curses. I don't know what it is. I don't know what Mookie Wilson did to celebrate after the ball went through Buckner's legs, but maybe it's something there. Maybe it's something in the way Andy Chavez caught that ball. It could be anything. I hope it's not.
Yeah, I mean, look, this Mets team, injuries has not been an issue this year. Kayla, look, I'm a diehard Mets fan. I love this team. It is a Mets tradition to boo the training staff at opening day. That should tell you everything you need to know about the history. I mentioned name Ray Ramirez. If you're a Mets fan, you know who Ray Ramirez is.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, the Mets have a huge injury history. James McCann hurt now. Not a guy that necessarily, are going to cry over losing. Of course, we don't wish injury upon anyone. But, yeah, of course, injuries. It's a thing for every team, though, to pay attention to. But you know what? That's going to do it for our Mets talk. I think, if I had to conclude it right now, I have loved talking Mets on this radio station over these past 4 years. And, I'll conclude on a positive note. It's a mantra for all Mets fans. You got to believe. You got to believe.